Hi there. Suddenly my country is completely covered with snow and it's really cold. Somewhere in the north there'll be temperatures of minus 18 degrees. It's all in the news. Europe has a real cold spell because there's continental cold air coming from Russia. While the polar regions are getting much warmer and having a temperature rise or difference higher than normal of 12 degrees last year. I'm not sure what it is this year, but it's probably something similar. The West gets cold, England is warm, it's all completely out of whack, and the way it's reported is still like it's an exception, but this is not an exception. It's basically more or less highly unpredictable weather with a general characteristics, which is a higher average temperature because of global warming. Um, my country is completely messed up. I'll make some images outside tomorrow with my camera, my good camera, because of course it's also very beautiful to see. But the whole road system was completely screwed up. The rail system was completely screwed up. Suddenly nobody could go anywhere. And these days there's of course more attention to gas and heating homes. And to me it's just like so ridiculous that people have to constantly buy something to heat their homes. It's just more and more the whole carbon economy and the fact that you use carbon energy for whatever it is seems more cumbersome, bothersome, idiotic and risky to me. Right now there's a discussion between Russia and Ukraine where Ukraine claims Russia is not supplying the agreed amount of gas. Russia says Ukraine is simply using a lot more because it's ridiculously cold there. It's like minus 35 or something like that. There's other regions in Europe which have the same problem. It's a gas battle, and of course one thing that is very significant, I think, to mention is that Russia says, well, we cannot increase our production anyway. We have our own increased needs and we cannot deliver more to a foreign country. We are delivering what we agreed to deliver, and that's not enough because you need more gas because it's colder than usual. Fair enough. I think that's a fair statement, but the important aspect of that is of course that they cannot increase their production of gas. Gas wells have a productivity which is limited by the diameter of the pipe that the gas comes through, and of course the pressure of the gas, and that's it. If you want more gas, you would have to suck it out, but that of course requires energy. So it's a question whether that will be, let's say, a net positive thing to try. That I think that, and I'm not sure about this, but if you investigate it, I would say that there's oil and gas wells that can produce variably, and there's oil and gas wells that simply cannot produce because they have too high pressure. I talked to somebody from Kazakhstan once about oil there, and there it was said that it was under such pressure, the carbon resources there, that it was really a question whether you could, let's say, open a well and then use it, or you'd just be completely flooded, or something else happens. A similar story I heard about geothermal heat in Australia, where they say the well is so hot that we cannot use it because it's too hot, our water that we put in will explode or something like that. I don't believe that type of talk. I think that's simply a complexification, just like in the last video I talked about it, like somebody wants to use geothermal energy, and because the ground is like steaming hot near the surface, and somebody says, well, no, it's too hot. You see, there your motivation or your idea for using some technology gets trumped by the same motivation. So let's say I say, well, there's an empty space, let's go inhabit that empty space, and then somebody says, well, no, it's too empty. Yeah, that's why I want to go there, because there's space there, or let's work this green land and plow it and plant trees and have culture there and live in villages and be wealthy and rich. And somebody says, no, it's too there's nothing ever happens, it's too natural. It really cannot stand the artificial reality that you want to, the structure that you want to impose on it. It just cannot handle that. No, it cannot handle that. It will change under that structure, and it will have that structure. That's how you change things. But anyway, that's what happened with geothermal in Australia, I think, which is a big loss. any use of renewable energy is simply unwanted, because it demolishes control structures that are now in place, which basically are there to more or less serve the fears of the few at the top, which are basically scared of chaos and war. But you know what you want to do if you want to fight the cold is build houses with very ridiculous insulation if you have a cold area, if you can afford it. And it's very easy to afford, because people build double-walled houses all the time. You put the straw bales in between the double walls, and suddenly the insulation becomes ridiculous. The walls become really thick as well, but that's not a problem. You know, go to Germany, Austria, Switzerland. There, the houses have pretty thick walls. They have double windows. They have had them for more than centuries, and that's very nice, because you have an outside window and an inside window. And if you open the inside window, you can put something in there. It's like a refrigerator in the winter. And it costs a little bit more, and then suddenly you don't need that much gas. That's one thing. The other thing is there's an Austrian product now, which is a flat plate vacuum solar thermal heater. Long sentence, but it's basically it's a vacuum tube solar let's say receiver for solar heat, but then flat. Of course, you know, for many years it was said it cannot be done. You cannot make a flat plate square vacuum thing, because it will collapse under the weight of the air pressure, and it cannot stand the vacuum. While we were flying to the moon and building refineries and battleships and all that stuff. All that guided missiles, guided bullets, drones, all that stuff happened. You know, we basically are I just saw, like, you have aluminum for military use that gets compressed with like a gazillion tons of energy to make it stronger, to simply press the metal so the structure of the metal changes. And that's very important in metals. Let's say if you have a piece of aluminum, you have like 10 types of aluminum, because they all have a little bit different internal structure and different behavior for that reason. But you know, those things is possible. But what we cannot do is make double glass with vacuum in between, and then collect heat, solar heat underneath it by some means. And of course, at the same time, you have for historical restoration of historical houses, you have historical isolation glass, which is double glass with a vacuum in between, but it's really thin, so you don't see it. That's why they make it. So for the niche market, you can make it. For the fantastically opportune, productive solar thermal heat market, you cannot make it. Or you can make it, but it's really expensive. And of course, it's more expensive than 2 times the glass that you're using and the cost of the stuff in between. Because afterwards you suck out the air between and it gets vacuum. That last act is complex enough, again, for somebody to talk to you and say, well, listen, no, this is historic building isolation glass is really complicated. You have to pay X amount, which makes it so that only people that really need it will buy it, and not the rest of the world, which would be nice. Because double glazed, anyway, long story about double glazing, but but that's one thing you can do. You can, first of all, you can insulate your house. Second of all, you can put these vacuum collectors on your roof. And if you can make them, I have a vacuum pump and I will try to do it, but I really have very little time these days. If you do it, then you find that you get a temperature of 300 degrees maximum in on a solar hot sunny day, which is ridiculous. That's enough to melt, I believe, tin or lead. So you can have your central heating run on liquid lead, something like that. I'm not sure, but you can run an oven of that, of course, of a flat panel, on a flat thing. Of course, you can bake bread and all that stuff with a focused solar beam. You can reach temperatures of 3000 degrees Celsius. That's not a problem at all. So you can evaporate stone if you want with solar heat. If you have like a focused lens or a parabolic trough of sufficient size, because parabolic trough of a small size won't reach those temperatures. But all these things are possible, but with a flat panel, which means that you also use all the space available to collect the heat. Austrian product. It's available for industrial use, not for your use, which would be the best use possible, because then you don't need gas, even if it's, let's say, minus 40 degrees Ukraine winter. At those temperatures the skies are usually clear, because it's so cold, all the water will fall out of the sky in the form of ice or snow. So you have clear skies and there's no problem heating your home at all. So isolation, vacuum plate collectors. And what I'm going to make is a solar air heater, which is let's say similar to having an extra window on the outside of your house. So you have windows that of course have solar yield or solar gain, as it's called, meaning that sunlight comes in. And then the walls in between, they either reflect the sunlight or they absorb a little bit, but usually they're light colored, so they'll reflect a lot of the light and the wall stays relatively cool. And that's why you have to isolate your home, because of course that coolness absorbs the heat that radiates from inside the house. So you lose your heat from inside the house to the outside, through the walls. What can you do? You can basically, where the walls are, you can make a little, let's say, window before the walls, and you paint the walls black, and then the sunlight will come in as visible light, become infrared radiation or heat when it hits the wall, and that cannot escape through glass, so it makes the wall warm, and you get a little greenhouse effect on the outside of your house. Now, if you're a little bit more advanced, that's a trombe wall. That's a French invention, where you basically heat up the outside wall of your house, and that heat will go inside instead of the other way around. And of course the stone wall will store heat. That's a trombe wall, and then of course you can circulate a little bit of air around that, through that little space where the glass is in front of the wall, and then you get a solar air heater. Which is smart, because that basically means that you would have the solar yield that you would have as if there was a window there, where you have this solar air heater on the outside of your house. So you have the heat, but not the light. It's a simple construction, very simple, and I made a movie about it before. There's some things to think about it, so there's some things to consider, but if you see how cheap it is to make such a thing, and how simply, let's say, how permanently it will add heat to the air in your home, and the fact that you can wonder how long does a window last that doesn't rot away, of course, in a normal home. Well, the glass in it can last for centuries. So that's what you're talking about. You're building something outside your house, extra window in your house, virtually, that can last for as long as the house exists. And if you do it in a place that doesn't really catch the eye too much, then, because of course it's you get a black area on the outside of your house, on the sun side, then on the south side, to be specific. If you do that, then only in places that don't really catch the eye, or you make a pattern out of it or something like that, then you can have that for 40-50 years, simply heating your home in the winter. And I think that's a good idea. Another idea that I already presented was to use wind power to make heat. And I think that I should really kind of gather together my own energy, which is a little bit difficult because now I have to travel a lot for work, and but I should not be complaining and present myself as a complete weakling, but I should try to make demo versions of all these things that I talk about, and one of them that I'm really enthusiastic about is using wind power for direct heat generation. Another one that I find very interesting and intriguing is, and which is not presented as cost effective, but which would also be cost effective if you take a new home. You have a house that you're building. It's in a place where you can collect solar heat, and you can calculate how much solar heat you can collect, and that it's in the summer and stuff like that. You want to store that heat in some way so that you can use it in the winter. Well, there's a very simple way to do that, because there are certain salts that if you dry them out, you use heat energy to do that. They'll lose their hydration, their water, what's in them, and as soon as you add water, they'll become very hot. And a similar thing is what happens to gypsum. If you add water to it and it's let's say it hardens, then it gets hot. But salts are like that. If they accept water, then they become hot, because they change shape, and that shape change apparently is means that they are in a lower energy state, and they radiate energy outside. So what you have, here's the nice thing about it. This is a little bit a tutorial video maybe, but it's magnesium chloride hydrate. I'll look it up. I'm sorry about that, but the nice thing is that if you have a container that's closed, that is airtight, or at least watertight, because these salts are not very aggressive in dry form, especially, and also not in hydrated form. They're simply a little bit different, but you can contain them in plastic containers, which last a long time, or steel containers, or whatever it is, and you can close them off, so there's not a possibility for water to get in at all. Which means that you basically store your. So if you see them as heat storage, they're hydrated. And then you heat them up, they become dehydrated. You close the container that they're in. There's no way that water can get in anywhere, and you can store them. And you can put them in your basement or wherever it is, or you can have a basin or at least plastic tanks in your basement with this stuff in it, and it can store the heat. It can accumulate heat all throughout the summer, and it stores it really reliably. So the only time that it starts giving off heat is if you open up the container and you allow water to or water vapor or whatever, the humidity of the air outside, to affect the salts and become absorbed, and then the salts become hot, and you use the temperature to heat your home. That's a form of heat storage that I think can definitely be economic, and I saw a calculation where and then it's about, and I have to check that, I just looked it up. There's a research in Holland about this, and it's a magnesium salt, and I believe that magnesium salt costs about, there was 7 tons of it, and it cost 2,500 euros. Let's say 2,800, which is 4 times 7, so that would be 40 euro per ton. No, 400 euro per ton. And I think that the correct number would be 40. That salt is much cheaper actually. So I have to check that, and I'll make a video of it. But this is a very long one. But I think that you see, if you have to remove yourself from a gas-powered situation for heating your home, and you want to survive, you don't want to freeze to death like many people in Europe and other regions of the world are sadly doing right now, then maybe you should stop looking at fuel altogether and think about homes as objects that collect whatever they need in order to be viable homes, to be comfortable places to live in. And I think that's technically possible. Let's say a mortal blow to heating your home problematics would be to be able to randomly dig a geothermal well wherever you are at low cost. So if you would have an installation that digs geothermal wells running on renewable energy gathered locally during the drilling, so you basically make in the summer you drill the wells using solar thermal heat and a steam powered drill. So you have solar thermal panels collecting solar heat, making steam pressure, and of course you need a lot of them, but okay, that's not a problem. You move them around, you put them in a certain place where the sun shines and where you want to drill the hole, and that steam that's generated by these panels drives the drilling rig. Then of course the cost of drilling are only those of the capital of the material that's actually used for drilling, so the pipes and all the stuff and the bits, that still costs something, but of course much less than the fuel needed for drilling, using such heavy engines. Anyway, this video once again is way too long. I think, so every house a geothermal well, that would of course be well, the end of any desire for gas for residential heating, which is, I think, a complete, and I think I'll use this word more often, it's an anachronism. Like say, banks are an anachronism. They're not properly of this time anymore. They're of a time that has passed now, which was, let's say, the era of abundant, easily accessible liquid fuel. I think that era is over, and we're also seeing that the era of abundant available gas will end, unless of course we start getting the clatrate gas from the oceans, and then we might as well just kill ourselves right away, because that's what we're doing with humanity if we try to do that. But again, sorry for this long video. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for listening.